Hi guys, how's it going? How you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am doing my next episode in my palette roulette series, in which I have some palettes in my collection that I utilize for a week or two or so, and then come back to you. I talk to you about the good, the bad, the ugly with the palettes, so show you some looks I was able to create via pictures, and then do some swatches for you, and we pull new palettes. Today I am reviewing 3 quads by Rabanne Beauty and 1 quint by Pat McGrath Labs, in which I utilize together. This palette is what is on my eyes today, and we'll talk about that. But other than that, if that sounds like something that you're interested in watching, please keep on watching because we'll roll right into it. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I am a field leader for Ulta Beauty. I am also a high-end color lover and firmly believe that self-care is something that we should do, and this is my self-care. This is what brings me joy, and I hope that you're here for it and want to stick around and watch and become part of my YouTube fam. I am trying to hit 2,000 by my birthday, which is in September. We have about 400 folks to go, and I'm really super excited to potentially get there. I have been doing this for quite some time. There's a plethora of videos on my channel, and even if this is not your cup of tea and you're just here for the review, I do have a ton of content that I'm sure that you can find something that you enjoy out of my video lineup, and I just thank you so much for being here. With that said, I am ultimately just out here talking about makeup because I like to talk about makeup, and if that soothes your soul as well, you have found the right place. So let's do it. Let's just roll into this. Let's talk about some makeup. Today, we're here to talk about 4 different palettes, but ultimately there's 17 shades total in the 4 different palettes. So not a big deal, like not a whole lot to talk about, to be honest. And these 3 palettes are literally the same-ish. So this is where we're going to start, and I'm going to talk to you about them as a whole, and then we'll swatch them separately. You guys know that I'm not doing like live swatches typically these days, but I think because there's only 17 shadows, I'm going to do live swatches with you today. These are the Rabanne Beauty Euphoria handbag palettes, and they're just quads. There's 4 shades per palette. These are $38. And they have 0.09 ounces of product, which means every shade in this palette has 0.02 ounces of product in it, or just above, which isn't a lot. Let's just say that it isn't a lot. These are inspired by freedom and self-expression and Gen Z. Definitely not me. I mean, maybe me a little bit considering like my hair choices, but they're also inspired by the fabrics and metals that define the fashion industry. We all know that Paco Rabanne is really iconic for fashion and fragrance, and jumping into the makeup category just seemed like something that was next on the list. These are boasted as being second skin feeling textures as far as the shadows go, and they are also boasted as 10-hour vibrant and comfort wear. So now that we've gotten all that out of the mix, each one of these is a quad. It comes with 4 eyeshadows, but you can also buy them in duos. I chose and opted for the quads because, like, listen, a duo just isn't going to do it for me, but I kind of wish I had picked up a couple of the duos versus a couple of the quads so that I could test the brand. Not that they're bad, but I have some thoughts. So I did pick up 3 different ones. I have Feel My Vibe, which is one that looks like this. It's kind of like this like blue, like purple moment with a little bit of peachiness to it. I also have the Unnatural World, which I would consider the purple moment, right? It has a little bit of pinky purpliness to it, lilac to it, with kind of like, again, this like peachy moment to it. And then I have the Paradise Lost Then Found, which is straight up green, right? It's a green palette. It's a beautiful green palette. Green is my favorite color. I've said that a lot these days. Each of these quads has 4 shades that range in finish from gloss vinyl to matte to sparkling foils and shimmers. So the only one that I have that has a gloss in it is this one, and it is this shade right here, which is a glossy texture. I have to be honest with you, I really wasn't a huge fan of this. It stays wet almost the whole time and has kind of a lack of pigmentation unless you build it up. And once you build it up, it kind of feels very heavy on the eyes. So that comfort wear boast that they have isn't true to that shade if you have to build it up to get the pigmentation out of it that you really want. And again, it kind of just stays tacky on the eye the whole time. I did use it a lot as kind of a quasi glitter glue because what I did like about these palettes is that I could use that as a glitter glue for any of the glitters on here, and the glitters typically did not perform any better or worse than they did with any other glitter glue or technically on their own. It is a vegan and clean brand and is considered conscious beauty at Ulta Beauty, and you can pick these up at Ulta Beauty. It states that there's no creasing and no fallout, and it is all of these are considered creamy powders, which I don't 100% understand. All of them were listed as a creamy powder on the website, even the shimmers and metallics. These work with or without a primer for a good 8-hour wear. I'm not sure about the 10-hour wear. I didn't see 10-hour wear out of these shadows at all. You could see significant fading at maximum that 8-hour mark. Some of them you could see significant fading at like the 5-ish hour mark. So I would not say that 10-hour wear is actually what you're going to get. And I also had a lot of fallout with these palettes. So when it says that there's no creasing and no fallout, I would say that that's false. The no creasing part, sure. I did not experience creasing with these palettes whatsoever, but the fallout part, I had a ton of fallout. There was a ton of fallout, and the shimmers would fall out all throughout the day, not just at application. And the mattes were weird. I mean, it was this like crumbly fallout, not just like powder fallout. It was crumbly fallout. They do feel really super creamy in the pan, but they have this like really strange, like dry-ish texture to them as you're applying them to your eyes. And they do fall out in a crumbly way. So it lends to them being a little more moisture rich, right? Because fallout just doesn't happen in a crumbly way unless they are more moisture rich. But it was very strange to me. It was very strange, the feeling of them. With that said, I do think that once they're on your eye, the mattes specifically, it is comfortable. It is very comfortable to wear them. They don't feel super dense. They don't feel heavy on your eyes like some like really pigmented mattes do. I do think that these are pigmented mattes for the most part. The shimmers, on the other hand, I do not think are, because they fall out all throughout the day. I did experience some eye irritation, specifically from this one here, which I wore the day I actually went in to get my hair done. And it's beautiful, but I put it over the top of the glitter glue. The glitter glue did not matter. Within a couple hours, I had it all over my cheeks, and I'm sure in my eyes because I was leaned up into the shampoo bowl or whatever. It's beautiful, but it did go into my eyes. It did irritate my eyes all day long. I think that the fallout boast is a myth. I think that that's a myth. The mattes were buttery smooth. They almost blended themselves. I think that the color choices could have been a little bit better. I do think that this one was made very, very well. It has the dark green matte, and then it has this like kind of like almost like khaki green color to it that is a satin shade that very well lent itself to kind of a matte. It's not like super shiny, so it could go into the crease and not look particularly awful. And then these two shadows here really complement the whole, right? This one, I don't think that this one matte that's in here and this one like satin that's in here complemented the whole. I think that it was rough to try and get a look out of this that made sense. I also think that this blue really doesn't have any opacity to it, so it was really disappointing. I think that these two shades go together really quite well, but I didn't have a whole lot of fun with this palette, and this one is the Feel My Vibe. This is really, really kind of like a really opaque, like peachy color that is beautiful for this shimmer, but the rest of it just didn't kind of go together. And then this one, I also feel, this one is Unnatural World. This one I also feel just didn't kind of make a whole lot of sense, to be honest. It does have two mattes in it, but the two mattes, one is like a deep, like neutralish brown, slightly cool tone actually, and one is a really like kind of like peachy brown, almost like orange, and I didn't really love it together with the shadows in this. And I also feel like that gloss formula, like I said, is stupid. I feel that exact same way with the glosses that Huda was putting in her palettes for a while. So I get it, because I feel that way about all gloss shadows. In addition, this palette, when it first came to me, you guys saw it, I think, when I presented this in my makeup rehab, this shadow here was completely shattered, and these weren't mailed to me. These were palettes that I picked up when I was in Alaska and I brought home with me. They're palettes that went into my carry-on, so they weren't like jumbled around or anything like that. They're just super fragile. Because they're super moisture rich, it wasn't hard for me just to push that shadow back into the pan and press it. So there wasn't any additional like alcohol that I had to put into it to repress the pan. So it repressed very, very well. They're largely a one and done like eyeshadow quad. You don't have a whole lot of variance in these quads, which is fine if this is like the only thing that you're going to take with you. But I honestly also think that they really need to be companion quads to whatever else you have going on, because like I said, 2 out of the 3 palettes that I have here, I don't really think are functional on their own. So there's that. I also would say that even the mattes in these palettes are much better applied with your fingers, which I don't love about these palettes, because I don't like playing with makeup with my fingers. So these shimmers aren't super impactful without your fingers. They pick up on a brush, but not very well. The gloss definitely has to be applied with your fingers. The mattes, I think for a pigmentation purpose, the mattes apply better with your fingers. If you pat it on with your finger and then blend it out, you're gonna see a much better like eye presentation with that shade specifically. The quality of these is just kind of meh, to be honest. Like I said, one of them came completely shattered and it wasn't something that was shipped to me, so I was really disappointed in that. They feel creamy but are actually weirdly crumbly, like I said. The shimmers literally fall out throughout the entirety of the day, even with the glitter glue underneath them, which is really odd in my humble opinion. And this packaging, which you would think is a beautiful like metal, is actually plastic. So it's not really like, it's not sturdy. The opportunity to break is there. They're $38 for 0.2 ounces of eyeshadows per pan, just a little over. So there's not much product here that you're getting. I just think that it is just meh, honestly. And I'm happy to have these, had a good time with them, and really love them as a complement to other palettes that I'm utilizing. But I do think that I probably won't pick up any more of these. And while I was using these, I also used the cream eyeshadow that I got with them as well. I also used, and this is truly beautiful, but it doesn't, I don't know, it's just not, I don't know. There's something about it that I don't 100% love based on the rest of the cream eyeshadows that I have in my collection. I mean, it's pretty, right? It's real pretty, but there's just something about it that I don't love. And I think like if you don't get it right in the first use, it just becomes like super patchy. But look at how pretty that is. It's super pretty. But there's just, like I said, just something that I don't love about it. And I can't pinpoint it. I don't know what it is. And I'm not like wholeheartedly disappointed in these palettes, but I am a little bit disappointed in these palettes. Like, this is boasted as the epitome of like Rabanne beauty, right? I mean, it is what it is. I don't 100% love them. So let's start with some swatches. I'm going to swatch for you first a Natural World, which is kind of the purpley one. So we just have 4 shades in each one, and these are the shades in this palette. I think that you guys can see that they just don't, there's just no going together in this palette. Like, I just don't get it. So we have Amethyst, which is a like sparkly, shifty, like pinky to blue shade. I did like this shadow, and I do feel like this one fell out a little less than some of the other sparkly shades, but it is still really loosely pressed in the pan. Then we have Ashtray, which I don't think is the best name for a shadow. I think that you guys can see with your finger, they just go on so well. This is a really pretty like taupey matte, creamy powder. Then we have what is called Tobacco Leaf, and it is an orangey brown matte, also a creamy powder. And again, like with the swatches, this is why I say they work best with your finger, because this is not what I got out of my eye looks when I was trying to use a brush with them. And then this is the vinyl shade that is called Lilac Glaze, and it is a gloss wet to dry-ish gel-like consistency shade, and it really does feel like gel, and it really, I don't feel like dries down ever enough. And as you guys can see, like the pigmentation, like, is just not there. I felt like it was really good as a base to put down for any of the shimmers that I was putting on top of it. It really did work very well for that purpose. And like I said, I don't think it hindered or helped, except for that the glitters had something to stick to with something that was part of the same group of items. I know that that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Let's look at Feel My Vibe, which is the one with like the blue and the like purple. So we have these 4 shades in this one. And first we have Chic, which is a rosy champagne that is so pretty, but so loosely pressed. And like I said, this one fell out all over, kind of inflamed my eyes, honestly. It's kind of got this like corally kick to it. I think it goes really super well with this like orange matte in the other palette, which is why I say I think that they're built for mixing and matching. They do really well for that, but I definitely don't think that they're standalone palettes. Then it has Stylish, which is a blue gray sparkle, which, like I said, I mean, you guys, there's literally no pigmentation to that. That is this shade right here. This was something that I was really looking forward to using, and I mean, it's just non-existent. Then we have Voguish, which is an aubergine metal, so kind of like a satiny shade. This one I think could have been a little bit better, to be honest. It kind of pills up on itself. It's just a very weird shade. And then the only matte in this palette is called Uptown, and it is an orange beige. And so what I would do is put this one down, then this one I'd use to blend out, then I would put this on the lid space, and then I would use this one on the inner corner. And that was actually a really beautiful eye look, utilizing those 2 palettes together. I'm not sure if I got a picture of that eye look. I have to be honest with you. Most of the eye looks that I did with these palettes came out really bad. So I only took a handful of pictures. This one was my favorite to play with, I think, because it made the most sense and because it just went with itself. Like, I could just pick it up and take it with me and knew that I was going to get a really decent eye look out of this. This one is the Paradise Lost Then Found. This shimmer in this palette, this one here, this light green, feels a little bit different than the rest of the shimmers in the palette. It is a little bit more firmly pressed than the other shimmers in the palette. So it is this one here. And I think it's a lot more impactful than the other shimmers in the palette. in the palettes. So we're going to start with another Land, which is a beige goldy duochrome metallic-y color, very loosely pressed. That one also does not have a whole lot of like pigmentation in the background of it, but it is such a beautiful like inner corner shade. Then we have the one that feels a little bit different in the pan, and it's called All Good Creatures. And it is a bright green metal that I feel like kind of swayed a little bit like gold. And then we have Twisted Forest, which is, I'm going to put it down here. It is the matte that is part of that palette, and it is a really beautiful like forest green matte. And then we have Heavens, which is a khaki green metallic, more firmly pressed. It's got kind of like a satiny feel to it, and it is also just really beautiful. But I think that you guys can see they work really, really well with your fingers. If you are just one and doneing it, like your fingers, use your finger to pat on the color and then blend it out just along the edges really, really carefully with a brush, because I do think that they perform better in that way, even the mattes. And that's not a favorite application method for me. So I think that that's why I don't really just love them. I like them. I just don't really love them. Green one does stain a little bit. I think that you can see that on my finger. But there was just so much about these palettes that I wanted to be just awesome, and it just wasn't. Like, the biggest disappointment, I think, is the blue. That I was really looking forward to this beautiful like baby blue like periwinkle shade, and it just wasn't that. It just wasn't. Would I purchase them again? No. Am I happy to have them in my collection? Sure. But I think that at best they're going to be just, you know, never going to be something that lands on my favorites. They're going to be the complimentary palettes. I'm disappointed in the packaging. I really feel like this should have been metal packaging. When we have like indie brands like Il Makiage that can do it, like Rabanne should be able to do it. I love that each one of them has a mirror, though. I think that that is something that doesn't often get put into quads, that I am glad that it exists in this quad. Then I had the Quint, which was the Pat McGrath Bijou Brilliance Lunar Nightshade, which was part of her holiday collection for this year. And this is what the color story of this guy looks like. This is a $36 palette. It has 0.14 ounces or 0.03 ounces per. And just to put this into perspective for you, this is Pat McGrath Labs. It is $2 less and has one extra shade. And it has 0.05 more ounces of product in it. The shadows in this are not much bigger than what is in this, but it just feels better. It feels better knowing that you're paying $2 less for more product from a luxury brand as well, right? So let's just start packaging wise. It is just cardboard packaging, and which this could have been charged us a little bit less for. It has a really nice mirror on it. I love it. It is standard like Pat McGrath holiday edition packaging. I love that it has the names of the shadows on the back. This also has the names of the shadows on the back. I also just, I mean, this packaging is beautiful. This packaging is beautiful. There are 5 shades. One of them is a matte. It is this shade right here. The rest of them are shimmers, metallics. It is cruelty free. It doesn't boast itself as being vegan or conscious beauty or anything like that. The one matte in this palette is a beautiful matte, super pigmented, right up Pat McGrath's alley. It is this beautiful like pinky tone. It is the only matte that's on my eye look right now. Although you would think that I have 2 different shades in here. Like, I think that it is a beautiful, beautiful matte. And surprisingly enough, even though this has 4 shimmers in it and only 1 matte, there's quite a bit of variety to this palette, because you can do what I've done today, which is put the matte matte all over my lid, and then top it with 2 or 1 or all of these shimmers, and it looks like a very different eye look than had you just taken the shimmers, put it all over your lid, and then pop the matte around those shimmers. So that matte is pigmented and opaque enough that it can handle the shimmers over the top and look like something completely different came out of this palette than what is listed here in the 5 shades that you have. I think that the shimmers in this are great, but they swatch horribly. Like, I remember swatching a couple of them before deciding what to use on a couple of my eye looks, and I'm like, that is not pretty. But then once I got it on my eye look, I was like, this is beautiful. Actually, they feel really creamy for the most part, the shimmers do, and they're a little bit more dense than I would say normal Pat McGrath Labs shimmers are, which I found to be very, very interesting as I was walking through this palette. All shades in this palette appear to be new shades. They don't appear to be shades that are in existence in other portions of her, you know, eyeshadow palette collection. When I went in to look at dupes for each one of the shades, I couldn't really find any dupes in her collection, and therefore also couldn't find the shades themselves in her collection. I think that the one that has the closest match is probably going to be this Midnight Iris. Has like there's a black one in a palette of hers. I can't remember which palette it is of hers, but it's like a black, I think it's maybe in another holiday collection of hers, but it's black with multi-dimensional sparkles in it. It reminds me a lot of this, but this definitely has a blue base to it, and that one definitely has a black base to it. So all of these appear to be new in this limited edition palette for last holiday. Let's talk about the shadows. Let's go ahead and swatch them because I do think that they're beautiful. And there's only 5, so it'll be super easy peasy to get them all on here. So these are the shadows in this palette. I think that you can see that they are just stunning. So first we have Platinum Moonlight, which is a really impactful, beautiful platinum like champagne shimmer. It is what is on my eye look today in the inner corner, and then moving out along the lid space as well. I loved this as an inner corner. I also put it into my brow bone a couple of times. I don't love it as a brow bone because it is a little bit too impactful for me for a brow bone, but it is so pretty. And then we have Midnight Iris, which is the only matte in this palette. It is what Pat McGrath does best, right? It is a violet plum satin matte. Then we have the Pale Amethyst color, which is a shimmer, and it is kind of a platinum pinky taupey shade. It's not as impactful as I've seen in many a Pat McGrath, you know, pinky taupe, but I do also want to preface that with these feel a little bit different than a mini a shimmer from Pat McGrath. These aren't nearly as loose, and they feel a lot more creamy than some of her matte or some of her shimmers have in the past. Like, a lot of her shimmers drive my eyeballs bonkers because they're a little bit more dry. This definitely is the most like moussey or creamy feeling of the shimmers in this palette. So it definitely looks a little bit thick and heavy, but it's not thick and heavy. It did not feel awful on the eye and didn't exacerbate any texture. This one is one of the ones that swatches really horribly. Then we have this one, which is the Noir Nebula. I think I called it Midnight Iris. This one is Noir Nebula. And this one is a deep indigo metallic with teal and gold shimmers in it. This one is the one that I said there is kind of a quasi dupe in the collection, but this one definitely has more of a blue base to it. And I hope that you guys can see that. The last shade in the palette is Neptunian Orchid, which is a beautiful, like, light blue, oh god, aquamarine metallic that has gold shimmers to it. It is so, so pretty, and I am so thankful for that color. I used it so much in some of the eye looks that I did over the last a few weeks to just really bring some pop to the eye looks that I felt like I wasn't getting from this. And actually it helped me kind of correct that blue in these palettes that I really wanted to show up that just didn't. So these shadows I think are just stunning. I think that they're beautiful. I think that they go together very, very well. I think that they speak to each other, and this quint makes sense to me. I am really happy that I picked this quint up, and it is the only thing from Pat McGrath's holiday collection that really spoke to me. So it's the only thing that I picked up from her last holiday collection. I am not as enamored by Pat McGrath as a lot of people are. I do think that she does a really great job, but her mattes for the longest time were my least favorite thing. And in this palette, and in the last one that I used from her, Midnight Sun, I think was the last one I used from her, I really did have a really grand time with this matte. I think that it did a really good job of blending out and kind of creating the sense of more than one shade, even though it is only one shade. I have in the past struggled to blend her mattes. I think that they're so firmly pressed, not super creamy, very, very dry, and become very, very patchy. That is not the case for this one. And I mean, the last several palettes that I've used by Pat McGrath, I've not felt that way about. So I'm really happy to have gotten, you know, a good feeling for these palettes, and really happy to have them in my collection. These are probably not my favorite, and at the end of the day, at the end of the year, they will probably not rank very high on my ranking, and I probably will not purchase another Rabanne eyeshadow. Even the liquid one I didn't love wholeheartedly, but I am really, really pleased with this palette specifically. So with that said, I'm gonna go pull some new palettes to use and talk about, and then we'll get you out of here. I'll be right back. Okay, I think I'm gonna do two very large palettes because I have had these in my collection for a minute now, and I've been wanting to use both, but I know that they don't necessarily 100% go together, but we're gonna see. I think that we're gonna see how we're gonna make them work. So I'm gonna bring in Danessa Myricks. So we're gonna do two Danessa Myricks palettes. One that is all shimmer, multi-chromy, different textures, and kind of quasi beautiful. This is the Lightwork Volume 5 eyeshadow palette called I Am palette. And then we are also bringing in the Danessa Myricks Groundwork Blooming palette. It's more pinkies and purplish than neutrals, which I think that this palette maybe needs is neutrals, but we're going to swing it. We're going to try it. So this is the Groundwork 5. Really beautiful palette. I do think that many of these shades will go perfectly fine with the Groundwork palette, and if not, I have other palettes that I can pull from that will help give me some of these colors. But I also did my deck of panning and brought in like two Urban Decay palettes that have a ton of colors, so those can help me out as well. And then the Groundwork Blooming Romance palette looks like this, and it is all mattes. Granted, it is a cream and a powder form of each version of that matte, but we don't have a whole lot of neutrality here. It's mostly pinks and coralies. There is a few browns in here, but they lean more on the warm end of brown, which I don't 100% think is going to go with the Lightwork 5 palette 100% of the time. So with that said, those are the palettes that I am going to be bringing in for the next several weeks. There's a lot of shadows to go through, so that one will probably take me a good amount of time to get through, and I hope that you want to come back and hear my thoughts and see my eye looks and my experiences with that palette, those palettes. Let me know what you guys think of the palettes that I just reviewed. Let me know what you guys think of the palettes that I will be reviewing. I would love to hear from you guys down in the comments section. I love our conversations down there, so don't forget to hit a girl up down in the comments section. Again, I'm trying to get to 2,000 before my birthday in September. I really just hope that you guys love my video. And if you did and you're not subscribed yet, that you want to subscribe before you go. And even if you didn't love this video specifically, I do have a whole lot of videos out there. I've been on YouTube for a while now. And I know that I'm confident that there is something that you will find that you love. So please subscribe before you go. I'd love to have you along for this crazy ride of mine. With that said, thank you guys so much for joining me today. I appreciate every single one of you for being here. I hope that you are all well, that you are all safe and healthy and getting along as best you can, that you are enjoying the sun, that you are loving each other, that you are being kind humans. And until next time, bye friends.